if you were on the side of Winston and Julia, the only reason you were brought to that position is so that we could crush your hopes. That's why. It was to crush you, the reader. Which is not why I've given it to you. But to show you, that's how it works. So as soon as you cheer for the underdog or for some way of escaping the ultimate determination of reality, your hope also has to be broken. And so the reader is offended that there is no happy ending possible in the future. That's what's so dystopian about it. It seems to apply outside the story. Over here. So part 3 begins in a white porcelain cell, a little bit like, well, the Presidio. He's being surveilled. He doesn't know how, but he knows that, there are microphones. Remember, the technology in Orwell's day is not like our technology, but it is an all-seeing panopticon. Big Brother is watching you. How? Who knows? In the case of Winston Smith, he's got 4 telescreens all around him. Well, that's how there. He doesn't have this ingenious idea that the Cubans had of creating a cell without walls and the jailer looking in. 4 telescreens. Ceilings are high. There's a hum that can be heard. He thinks he's in the Ministry of Love, but there are no windows, so he has no idea where he is. That's, again, part of the determination of reality. I'm in a place, I have no idea where it is. It would be helpful for him to know where he was. It would orient him. They don't want him to be oriented. They want to be disoriented. They don't want any reality other than what they have in that prison cell. The prison cell with 4 gray walls and 4 telescreens is a symbol of what the party wants to project as itself. He's got hunger pains and they seem to be growing. He sticks his hands in his pockets to hope to find some breadcrumbs. He gets told off by the telescreens. He's not even allowed to move. They're constantly being terrified, all the prisoners. And what the effect of this is just like pain in the death of Ivan Illich, it means that time seems to have no meaning. It's indefinite. It's the same thing every day, constantly. He can't even stick his hands in his pockets. The screen shouts at him, threatens to come in, and if he doesn't do what they tell him, they'll come in and they'll beat him. So he will. What they're doing is breaking him. There's no sunlight. You can't tell if it's night or day. There's nothing that marks the time. What he hears is that he's in room 101. This is English 101, by the way. I was thinking, why do we have to call it that? But he knows that the worst thing he could ever imagine is what they intend for him. He hears the boots coming towards him, and then the door opens, and he is shocked because it's none other than O'Brien. He thought O'Brien was on his side and was a rebel escaping the system. He had met O'Brien before he went into prison. He was a co-conspirator, he thought. Not so. He does meet another prisoner. The other prisoner's name is Tom Parsons. He admits only that he had done one thing wrong, and what was that? It was thought crime. The reason this is an irony is that he's the poster child for the whole party. Tom Parsons was the ideal party member. Winston thought that he would escape because he's so thoughtless. And what it also demonstrates, and this is part of, again, the genius of Orwell, is to show that nobody will actually be able to live up to the standards of the party. Nobody. As long as there's anything human in them. No human being can meet these standards. In chapter 2, we find Winston lying on his bed, and O'Brien, he wakes up and O'Brien's standing over top of him, and there's a man in a white coat with a syringe, and we all know what that means. Well, we mostly know what it means from this novel. The medical profession is there, and the medical profession there is there to help him. But what's it there to help him to do? To agree with what the party says is reality. And he reflects while he's lying on his bed of pain on how many times he's been beaten and how long the beatings lasted, because that's all that he has to mark his days, is to think of how many beatings and how long the beatings were. There is no day or night. He doesn't, as I say, he can't see outside of the prison cell. His confessions don't seem to matter because he's already confessed everything. To the point where he is shouting at them, "What do you want me to confess? I'll say it. Anything you want me to say, I will say." And he even admits things that he hadn't done. And then they punish him for lying, which confuses him because he said he thinks that everything the party says is a lie. So what does it matter if there's a lie? But you believe that's a lie, don't you? Yes, well then you are lying. And this is a way of, again, you break someone. And he hears O'Brien's voice, and it's in a very fatherly tone. "Don't worry, Winston. You're in my keeping for 7 years. I have watched over you. Now the turning point has come. I shall save you. I shall make you perfect." So you talked about the resemblance with Christianity. In Christianity, the Father makes the church perfect, without spot or blemish. Same thing is happening here, a total commitment to the conversion or the total identification of Winston with the party. He is the party. That's what he wants to effect. In Christianity, there's a certain orthodoxy. There are doctrines that you have to adhere to. Does that obliterate you, you're a human being, or does it make you human, make you more human? Who's the role model for Christian identity? Jesus, right? Here it is nobody. There's no individual. That's the whole point. We want to erase the individual. All that's left is the party. It's a collectivist mindset. "7 years ago, Winston heard the dream that I will meet you in the place where there is no darkness." That's the prison cell. He didn't know that. He thought it might be like something like heaven, where there's only light. Instead, it's the glare of a gray cell where there are telescreens. And he is hooked up to a machine. The machine inflicts pain upon him, seemingly randomly. And the randomness is part of what breaks him as well. There's no consistency to it. Again, that an order would suggest that order has a meaning. We need to be chaotic in the administration of it. It can't be in response to anything. It can just be random. We talked about this in Heart of Darkness, a comparison between Rome and the modern European states. In Rome, when an army failed or did something or didn't obey orders, they would decimate them, which means that every 10th man was killed. That's what to decimate means, every 10th. And it would be randomly chosen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Except not a gun. Just cut him down. Hacked down by one of his fellow team members, guess what happens next time you go into a fight? Are you going to run? No, because why would you run? To save your life. Did you save your life? You might have, but you're going to be, one of you 10 is randomly going to be killed when you go back. Would you rather take that into your own control, or would you rather let someone arbitrarily kill you? So it's a very powerful tool of getting people to do what you want them to do. So it's not a new device, arbitrary punishment. You do it on sports teams as well. If one person's sort of not following the rules, you make everybody do laps or whatever, right? And then everybody, the guy who was not doing what he was told, everybody makes sure the next time he does it. And they might give him special treatment after the fact, but you are going to operate and cooperate. This is of the same order, but again, exponentially more so. So there's a machine that administers pain. O'Brien asks Winston questions. If he doesn't answer the way he wants him to answer, he gestures and then the pain comes. And every time he raises his hand, the pain goes up a notch. What does he ask? At this moment, what power is Oceania at war with? He answered, Eastasia. O'Brien continued, and Oceania has always been at war with Eastasia, has it not? Winston hesitated. He knew that just a week ago, before he was arrested, Oceania was at war with Eurasia. But he also knew that if he didn't give a satisfactory answer, the pain would come again. So what does he do? What's the right answer? He doesn't know what the right answer is. It seemed during the whole interrogation process that O'Brien could read his mind. O'Brien told him to answer his truth. Tell me your truth. Winston did just that. O'Brien explained to him that it was a delusion. And then tells him, I'm going to help you. And explains to him what the reality is. The whole purpose of this is to break him into thinking that there is a reality that he has access to that O'Brien does not. And to convince Winston that O'Brien knows everything about him from top to bottom. So confusing him. And one of the questions that Winston raises, which is one of the questions that the audience, at least the reader, is also questioning, is why don't you just kill me? Like, why are you going through all of this effort to make me agree with what you say? Why not just kill me? And O'Brien, I think, says something very telling here. He says that it's not enough to be obedient or to submit. You have to freely give up yourself. You have to. They're not going to allow martyrs that are dying against their will. They have to freely want to be killed. Why does the party insist on that? Because again, everyone within the party also believes that the party is the only reality. Like, they really believe it. And so they have to make everybody think that this is so. It's not enough that they die. They have to believe that what the party says is true, and there is nothing else. That's why. It's a total commitment to re-education. In chapter 3, O'Brien gives us a little bit more of an explanation of what's going on here. Says there are 3 stages that you're going to go through here. One of them is that you are going to have to learn. The second is that you're going to have to understand, and the third is that you're going to accept it. Room 101, which he's not in yet, is going to be part of the second stage, which is a little bit odd because that's understanding. What happens in room 101? The worst thing he could imagine. What happens in room 101? What's he most afraid of? Rats. And the rat will be Where? It's inside of a bag which is put around his face so the rat can't get out. He sees nothing but the rat. The rat's in there with him. The rat's hungry. That's the phase of understanding. What does that have to do with understanding? Facing the rat. That's not understanding. Again, it's doublespeak. It's experiencing it. But again, they're erasing the difference between your thoughts and what happens outside of you. That is gone. It's he calls it understanding. It's not understanding. Winston finds out that O'Brien was actually one of the authors of Goldstein's book. And what Winston hears from O'Brien, in which he echoes Michel Foucault, the postmodernist French literary theorist, is that the object of power is power. That's the purpose of here. Power for the sake of power. That's what we're after. We're just after power. Why are you doing this? Power. No other end in sight. And this is where Orwell, I think, exposes the motivation of the atheist, collectivist world, dystopian world that he depicts here, is that, again, Foucault says that knowledge is power, and that people pursue what they call knowledge for the purposes of power. It's always a power motivation. It's the real motive. They say that it's the pursuit of truth and goodness and beauty. No, that it's just after power. That's the only motivation. So says Foucault. Foucault, who writes a book called Discipline and Punish about the humanities. It's a terrible book, by the way. Fraudulent in its representations of things. The motivations for everything is not power. But you would think it was if you denied that there was such a thing as goodness, beauty, truth, justice. Then you would say that power was the motivation for all these things. And you would say that people act and claim to be doing justice or doing the right thing or whatever because really it's a way of manipulating for the purposes of power. If that reflected your own view, and I think it does reflect Foucault's view. The reason he says everybody else is motivated by power is because he's projecting. He's motivated by power. But that is what Orwell says here in chapter 3, part 3, chapter 3. Whatever reason the government gives for increasing control, it's just a cover-up because they want more power. That's what we find out here. It's the motivation for governments that are atheistic. It's the root motive, and it's the goal. And interestingly, O'Brien says, that this was why the Nazis and the Russian communists failed. They took power with the intention of giving it up once things had been made better for everybody. So there was an intention, it was just a provisional. We seized power, totalitarian, for just a limited period, and we're willing to give it up at the end of all that. Once we got what we wanted out of it, we would let it go. O'Brien says, no, that's a mistake. Big Brother has no intention of ever giving up power because that was the reason for seizing the total power to begin with. He's just consistent. Why does an atheist not believe in God? Because it acknowledges the power outside of himself. And he wants absolute power, so he can't acknowledge it. Well, how far will he go then to deny that? Well, he's going to deny every reality that is outside of his own determination. And that includes the terms and references of language. You can't refer to male and female, or you can't refer to right and wrong, or truth and falsehood, or light and darkness, and so forth. Those are things that are outside of my control. To have all power, I have to have control over everything. God is just the first of the consequences and the chief one. But I also have to get rid of every implication associated with that. So I think Orwell is not just presenting a dystopian future, he is very consistent in tracing out the consequences of atheist ideologies. He says the communists haven't perfected it yet, neither did the Nazis. But the future they will, because they'll realize that the whole motivation wasn't to do a good thing, it was just to get power. Or even to do a bad thing. It was just to get power, no other motivation. By the time we come to chapter 4, we see the evolution of a character, by the way, here in Winston. I don't think that Orwell is entirely successful with this because it's difficult to convey to the audience. We see a character who's developing here, and the development is a regression insofar as Winston now is only concerned with being able to eat and to be clean. That's all he cares about. All other thoughts, like why did this happen, thinking is no longer something he concerns himself with. So he's been broken. And now all he wants is Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. He just wants to eat and he wants to be clean. He's given up. His mind is surrendered. He obeys the party. But he still wants a sort of a privacy. And so O'Brien comes in and makes sure that too is broken. You have to get rid of the idea that you have a private sphere within your conscience or your consciousness that the party is also not involved in. The panopticon goes all the way through. There are no walls on this prison. It's always looking in through the walls of your physical body even. It's seeing inside you. So every move that he thought had been done in secret, he is told the party had orchestrated. So the purchase of the diary right at the beginning of the story, down with Big Brother. The party saw that and probably brought it about. The pen that he wrote the journal entries in, the purchase of the paperweight with the coral inside of it, his relationship with Julia from beginning to end, where it happened, what happened. The party was involved in all of that. Everything that he thought was a private rebellion was controlled by the party. This is a way of rewriting his history, not just history, but his personal history. All of those individual acts that marked you as an individual, they weren't real. We controlled them. Yes?
Was it actually controlled by the party?
No. I doubt it. But he thinks that it is because he can't determine. Again, if you're cut off from everybody and you're stuck in a room, and it seems like they're torturing you, not only for things that you did, but arbitrarily, like he's disoriented. And he will accept the view of his own history that they tell him. And this is how brainwashing works, that people actually get brainwashed. That's what's happening here. And they had been watching the whole time, as he says, like a beetle under a magnifying glass. That's his phrase for it. Shows how small he is in comparison to the greatness of the party. I don't know if Orwell has in mind Kafka's novella here, The Metamorphosis, in which the author wakes up and thinks that he's a bug. Suddenly he's a bug. I don't know if you've read that little novel. But that's what it's like. I am an insignificant being that the party can just crush, stamp out. That's how insignificant I am. So the party is like God looking down on the populace, and he is just part of that, totally insignificant. And so far above the beetle, as he is above a beetle, the party is above him. That's what he needs to understand. That's the whole intention here. Now, chapter 5, he finally gets to room 101, the worst place imaginable. Why does he think it will be so terrible? Because he's seen other people who've gone in there. Remember, they keep him away from other people, and they carefully let him meet other people only under certain conditions. What are the conditions? That they tell him how bad room 101 will be, which makes him terrified of it. The sense of dread is greater than the reality if that were possible. I'm not sure it is, because the rat's inside the bag inside and it's around your head. I think that's pretty awful. But the lead up to it is what is so overwhelming. He can't imagine what could be in there because he's already suffered so terribly, arbitrarily. What could possibly be there? And we're told that it does vary from person to person what that thing will be. What will it be? In his case, O'Brien says, it's rats. So there he is, in the place, room 101, where people will face their very worst fear. And he yells, as you can imagine, and pleads. And O'Brien ignores him, describes the contraption that will allow the rat to be kept in the cage wrapped around his head. Walls on 3 sides. Again, the cage is a symbol of him. He is the rat's him. So what's the difference between him and the rat? He's a rat in a cage. There's a rat in the cage. It's surrounding his head. The 4th side of the cage is Winston's face. The 4 walls of the prison being the 4 telescreens. There's a cage out here and around here. The 4th wall is where your face is being stuck in there. And O'Brien very helpfully comments that when rats are terrified, they try and chew their way to freedom. It's not and he gets the cage put on his head and he can smell the rat. And he can't see it very well because it's up close to him. But he can see the pink claws reaching up towards him. It's just awful. And at the last, when this happens, he screams out, "Do it to Julia, not me." And then he hears a click. And what's the click? The cage door going down. He saved himself. He gets rewarded. How did he get rewarded? By betraying Julia. Do they believe him? No, it doesn't matter. He betrayed her. That was an important thing. They wanted that from him. He has to betray everything that he most loves. O'Brien says that this use of rats as a face mask was used in Imperial China as a means of punishment. True story. Orwell mentions this not by accident. He wants to explain the type of government that would be there and what was happening in communist countries. He's thinking of communist China. He's also thinking of Soviet Russia. The problem with communism is that it is not happy to stay in one country. It is a global movement. It insists on total control. Again, this is what I said about the atheist premises and their ultimate outworking. The pros are not going to be left alone. They can't be left alone. It has to be total. They're not going to be satisfied with having a bit of power, even the majority of power. They need absolute power, because that's the motivation. So Orwell is effectively saying that what communists aim at is absolute power over absolutely everything. And therefore, there can be no peace between free peoples and communists for that reason. As I say, I read it in 1984 when the Iron Curtain still existed and so forth. But what this chapter shows is how committed the party is to total control. It will make you betray everything. The one thing that you think you're holding back for yourself, it will not allow you. That's the one thing you have to give up. So he goes there because it's the place where the worst thing imaginable could happen, but the worst thing imaginable doesn't happen. But it's enough to push him to betray Julia. That was the thing. He's thinking, what can I do to stop this at this stage? What would do this? And the reason he falls upon betray Julia is because he intuitively knows that's the one thing that I've been holding back. So I'll let that go. Very important stage. Chapter 6, we find him out of the prison. He's in the Chestnut Cafe, listening to a telescreen. So did he get out? What happens here? He gets a glass of Victory gin. He gets it without even asking for it. He's listening to the war updates, playing chess as a job which pays him better than his old job did. Maybe he's okay. No worries about money. He had worries about money before. Now he doesn't. The party's looking after him. He saw Julie in the street. They get to a private place. They start to talk. And what do they talk about? They confess that they betrayed each other. She betrayed him as well. And what is the outcome of that confession? Do they say to each other, of course you did, because you were in room 101 and you were forced to do the thing, the thing you feared most was the thing you were confronted with, and under such conditions, of course, what you confessed, you didn't actually believe. Did they go to that? And so let's carry on. No. The result of that is they know that they can't feel for each other what they felt before. So the attachment between them is totally broken. Even though they were coerced into it, they still have lost any sense of integrity. They've been forced to say a lie, and they lose all value. Integrity. They have no sense of selfhood anymore. And so they put the two of them together and allow them to freely do this. They don't coerce them anymore. Now they let them out there and they show them how broken they both are. They no longer love the person that they had loved as the rebellion. And the fact that they've betrayed one another betrays to them that they have no integrity anymore. They're just like Big Brother. Right is wrong, wrong is right, doesn't matter. So they are broken people. And they let Winston become one of the proles. But now it doesn't matter. At the beginning he said if there was any hope it would be in the proles. Now he knows that there's no hope in the proles. He's one of them. He heard a song in the Chestnut Tree Cafe. What was the song in the Chestnut Tree Cafe? Under the spreading chestnut tree, I sold you and you sold me. That's the song he hears in the background. And what does that mean for him? Well, it's a song written for him. He betrayed Julia, Julia betrayed him. So the love that was the little glimmer of light in the dark backdrop of the whole story is given up. Julia had said to him early on, they can't get inside of you. You can act like this and then the outside they'll see that, but they can't really get inside you. Now he thinks that's not true, and so does she. They can get inside you. So that's how it ends. A totalitarian government wins. There is no place of where they are not involved. Comments or questions? I do think it's an implication of atheism. For atheism to be true, It has to deny the possibility of any reality which would contradict it. Atheism and communism go together very well. And both of them oppress the reality of an individual human being, all the way down. I have nothing more to say. Okay, so if you don't have any further questions, next time we're going to come to Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. It is a similarly dystopian novel, with the difference, as I say, that it makes it a place in which people seem to be happy, and which the control over the populace happens with their consent. And the question is, are they more dehumanized than Orwell's 1984 depicts them, or is this a better way? Well, I mean, it certainly seems to be better because they're delighted, or seemingly so. Are they any less dehumanized? Well, we'll raise that next time. Okay, I'll see you then.